don't think that was by mistake. I do think that the Holy Spirit was watching over me and knew how to grab me. It was through the intellect. So it was through my study of Franciscan history that I eventually returned to the faith and became Catholic. So it really is an honor and a privilege for me to be here with you to share not just my research, but myself, my faith, and my very self with you. Interest in Franciscan spirituality and the Franciscan tradition has increased since our present Pope took the name Francis. In fact, Franciscan spirituality is kind of trendy. So what I'd like to do tonight is kind of work from what you know about Franciscan spirituality, Francis of Assisi, Clare of Assisi, and build on that to talk about some figures and some facets of Franciscan spirituality that I suspect you don't know. And that is how do lay people, people like you and me, live out Franciscan spirituality. The prayer, make me an instrument of your peace. Why does that appeal to you? Everything about it. It's perfect. It touches you on a deep level. It speaks to you. Anything else?
Yeah. Love, which was taught to us by Christ, but then what Francis, to me, brought to it was surrender.
I was going to say the simplicity of the man, but Dick did a much better job of elaborating, I think, on the points that I reflected on about him as well.
What he did was so completely countercultural, he gave up all of his wealth that he was entitled to. He gave up his vocation to go into the business of his father. He gave that all up against all odds and against all social expectations. And of course, many people did think he was mad and needed help.
I think he saved a lot of the true meaning of our church.
He did. He went back to the Gospels and wanted to follow Christ and the Apostles to the letter, renouncing property, going out 2 by 2s, preaching the gospel, which was not unique at the time. He was not the first person to do this, but he was the first person to make it fully acceptable. Yeah. So I want to touch on that in terms of what he did. We've talked about his poverty, his humility. He was strictly obedient to the Pope, where some of the other people who were also taking up the mendicant lifestyle, that is, wandering and preaching in the streets, they weren't always obedient. Francis was completely obedient. He was a close follower of Christ. He's also known for receiving the stigmata, that is, the wounds of Christ, 2 years before he died. So therefore, he's known as a second Christ. And as we've said, he adored all of creation. But the edgiest part was giving up his wealth and having an itinerant life, not knowing where he was going to sleep every night, not knowing where he was going to get his meal. But how could women follow Francis of Assisi? This is an image that we recognize as Clare of Assisi, who we think and we call often the founder of the female branch of the Franciscan order. She started the Sisters of Poor Clare. She wanted to follow Francis in all that he did, including begging and itinerant preaching. She wasn't allowed to, though, because it was considered scandalous. Scandalous to have a woman in the midst among men. Also, Francis and his followers weren't sure that they could protect her. So she was asked to live in a cloister. That is an enclosed community that she entered and did not leave. So she lived out the Franciscan charism in a very different way. And throughout our tradition, and frankly, if you look at a lot of Franciscan spirituality books that you'll find on Amazon, you'll see that Clare is always depicted as the leader of the female branch of the Franciscan order. But how many of us women live in a cloister? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, just to clarify for the people watching on the video that will be made from this. None of us live in a cloister, and among you laymen, and even you ordained men, there's at least one ordained man that I recognize up all of your possessions and sleep on the streets day in, day out. Not know where your next meal is going to be, to beg for each meal. Okay, I'm not seeing it. What must it have been like for Jacoba to be sitting at Francis's side? I think at first she might have talked with Francis as he was able, talked about what was on his mind. But as he got deeper into that process, that transitioning process from his life, he had probably lost his ability to speak. And I think that she sat with him. I think that she held his hand. I think that she was privileged to be the one to help keep him clean, to offer him a sip of water, to listen to his breath as it changed, as it became more irregular. And finally, to be with him as he breathed his last breath. Such an important person as this, that Francis asked her to be with him as he died. And we've forgotten this image in the lower basilica of San Francesco, this image that you will find on Google if you do a search, Clare of Assisi image. You will find this image. We think it's Clare. And in lots of books, you will see this is Clare of Assisi. Her last name is Sette Soli. Sette Soli. 7 sons. Still in the 14th century, artists and contemporaries knew the importance of Jacoba because they had her painted in the Basilica of San Francesco. But over the centuries, it has become so irregular and so unaccustomed and even so daring to have a religious man and a lay woman be equals in the spiritual life. That over time, it was re-identified as Clare. Because it would be natural that Clare and Francis would be coupled together. Not Francis and a lay woman. Striking, I think. What does our understanding of the Franciscan tradition look like if, when we see this image, we don't see Clare of Assisi, but we see a lay woman, Lady Jacoba, who Francis requested to come to him when he died? So in the end, before we break for question and answer, I just want to bring this all together. I think that even more than the poverty of Francis of Assisi, the humility, even more than the obedience and the adoration of all creation, I think the important component of Franciscan spirituality that we can develop in our own faith life is the spirituality of mutuality, of collegiality, and partnership. That we are all equals in the life of faith. And we are all teachers. We are all evangelizers. If we don't give way to fear. And certainly we all have the capacity to be present like Lady Jacoba. I think those are the pearls of Franciscan spirituality that we can develop here, even in La Cañada Fruit Ridge. So thank you.